Okay, so I'm going to try to show you how to replace a meter on a Hickok tube tester with a new old stock American made meter. So here's the meter I'm going to put on here. Right here. It's a nice taut bond meter. It has the Hickok 800 scale. And the reason I'm replacing this is because I bought this tube tester and it had a 533A 600A meter on it. Same microamperes, 500 microamperes, 233 ohms on the meter. But this scale is missing the shorts leakage scales. Everything else is relatively the same. Also, it doesn't have the transistor on the scales here if you're interested in that. Although I doubt many of these tube testers are testing transistors anymore. So these meters on the Hickoks are bigger, and they can easily be replaced. So what I've done here is I removed this meter and I've put this template on here. This is for a triplet 420. I've already tried it on this new meter I'm going to replace. It's the same size. Basically all these American meters, the old Simpsons, triplets, APIs, have the same template, so on the 4.5-inch meters. So what I've done is I cut it to size. I'm interested in the bottom. To begin with, the top two holes is what I'm going to use from the Hickok original meter. I'm going to stick these little bamboo sticks in here that go down nice and tight to the same size as the hole. So I want to get this lined up perfectly. And I've also put blue tape on the tube tester, so when I cut it, it'll help reduce some of the scratches I might make. So anyways, this is how the new meter is going to sit on here. And the problem is the two bottom holes, as you can see, are a little bit higher up on the Hickok meter. The meters are relatively the same. The new meter is going to be a little bit smaller. But the Hickok meters, the movement sits in the case much lower on the case than most American-made meters, which makes it a very difficult change. Now I have different. I could just change this plate out with an 800 plate, but the problem with these Hickok tube testers is one of the weaknesses is the meter, because they're so old, and a lot of problems come with these meters from corrosion, cat whiskers, different problems with the meter. Although I will clean this one. I've tested the meter. It's a good meter. I've tested it. I'll clean it up and I'll probably sell it because I know there's somebody out there that can use a 533A or a 600A meter on their tubes tester. They have a bad meter. Other than that, the tube tester is fine. And someone would appreciate just popping this in their tube tester and having a working tube tester again. Although, instead of changing this to an 800 plate on here, which would just make this an 800 meter, I'm going to replace the meter with a nice new taut bond meter, which is made 500 microamperes, 233 ohms, with a Hickok scale inside of it, which is a much nicer meter than these 60-year-old meters. This one has no corrosion. It's a beautiful meter. I've tested it on this tube tester and it works really nice. So as you can see, I put the template up here, and now what I'm going to do is mark where I'm going to put these two bottom holes, and I'm going to draw a line on the tape, and then I'm going to cut this little section out right there, and this meter should fit right in there. Now if I ever have to go back and put the original meter in, let me mark where these holes will be. Let's say I decide I want to go. People don't like doing this. Some people don't, because they want to keep their tube tester all original. But that's great if you have a really nice meter that's clean and it hasn't suffered for 50 years getting the corrosion. But almost all these meters have lost some magnetic field and They just don't work as well as they used to. So let's say I'm going to put the original meter back on. So you only got maybe a 1/4 inch of a moon shape I need to cut out to put the new meter on, with 2 new holes right below the original holes on the Hickok tube tester. So as you can see, if I did put the original meter back on, it would still cover all the holes. It'd cover everything just like it did before. There's going to be, you won't even notice there's an alteration to this tube tester, even if you went back to the original meter. And you will not notice any other holes or any alteration to this tube tester with this new meter on here. You won't see any extra holes or any extra spaces. All I'm really doing is just making this hole a little bit bigger at the top so this can move up and these 2 studs here can drop into the top 2 holes, and I'll have to drill 2 new holes for the bottom studs. That's it. It's a simple alteration, and you can make your tube tester almost function like new. So anyways, what I'm going to do, I'm going to mark this with this template on here that I've already fitted to the new meter. And I use these bamboo sticks that are pointy at the end, and they go in there nice and tight, so I get these holes lined up. I want it to be as perfect as possible. And I'm just going to color. As you can see, I've already done this before on this template. Use a Sharpie, put a line, and then when I cut the new hole out, I'm going to cut it right above the black line that I put there. Just to make sure, because this is a really tight fit, just to make sure I have enough room. As you can see, it's a very little amount that I'm going to need to cut off of here. Getting all this fucking particles in here to blow it out and tape it off. There we go. Yeah, it's important you take this off. Stop getting the metal particles down your tube tester slots. I blew it all off with my air hose. Not that big of a deal, but it's something if you can avoid, you should avoid. Gotta remember to wear your glasses. And breathing protection. And as you can see, what I do is I put little indentations in where I'm going to make this the half moon or a partial moon at. So just to get the little groove started, so the Dremel or the cutting tool will stay in the groove when I go back over it to dig down deeper. Otherwise, you have a chance of slipping off, putting a big scratch on the tester, which I've done before. All right, back to work here. And if I can, I'm going to fast forward through this if I can figure out how to, everybody gets that fancy fast forwarding on YouTube. So I tried to fit the meter in there, and it's a little bit too much right in this area. That's why I put these lines here, because when I made that moon shape, it wasn't even. So I put a line here thinking, well, I might have to go down there to make it even, which I do. So I need to cut just a little bit off more of here. So let's cut it off. This time, I'll wear my glasses. Check, see if it fits in there. Cleans up a little bit. I'll smooth it out by hand with sandpaper. All the off. As soon as I see that, I'll go ahead and start off. Same hands, make sure you fits. So the meter fits. It's just a little, take a little notch off, a little bit that sticks out here. Plenty of room on the top, and I'm just going to shave a little bit more off here with the grinder. We're going to make it fit. Okay, it looks fairly symmetrical. A meter will fit in there. Now I'm just going to rig up some sandpaper on something and sand it so it's nice and smooth. Okay, so just wrap some sandpaper around a round piece of wood. It seems to give me the best smoothness. It's really smart. Okay. Look, see this Check it out. This is all same. So that's it. You can figure out. Anymore. So first meter I have. As long as I get the top two holes in, just enough. Either two. See where we're at. Plenty of space. Looks symmetrical. A little bit of edge down there. I'll take it off. So that space is sufficient. A little nice plane. Just get one out a little bit. You don't have to go to anything. Just that's right. So that's it. That's how you cut the hole and smooth it out for installing a new meter. Really not that difficult. And didn't make one little tiny scratch there I don't like, but for the most part came out pretty nice. Okay, so here's how much of a metal cutting disc I used compared to a new one. God damn it. I don't know, not that much. The discs work great. Just that when I use these littler ones, I seem to get a more precise cut. These ones here are thicker and a little bit more aggressive than these little tiny cutting discs that I have. Heavy duty cutoff wheels. problem with these ones is they get so small you gotta really get down in there tight. So I'll probably just keep using the big ones. Did an okay job. I left it a little bit more rough than I like to leave it. Most of it's sanded off though. So this easy lock thing is pretty nice. In case you don't know what that is, it was sort of new to me. Just pull down on this, twist this around. My hands are cold. Pull down on this. And it's supposed to twist like that and pops right off of there. Pretty nice. Way better than those screws, so I'll just keep using these. Put that in this bag. And you know, I have used just a regular Dremel type tool. This one I use this little hand unit off my Craftsman all-purpose cutting tool, which works well, which has variable speed on it. And it's nice because it's not as big as a Dremel. It's easier to get down in there. You almost need this if you're going to use these little discs. So that's about it. I'm just going to clean this mess up and go back in the house. Okay, so before I started cutting this, and while I still use the template, I noticed that what needed to be cut out was a little bit farther down on the left side than the right. And I know from experience of cutting these out that no matter how you put the template, how tightly you put it onto the meter, how accurate you get the holes lined up with the right size holes and everything else, and you're trying to make the hole as small as possible, that wherever the lowest part where it comes down, whatever side's lower, you need to match it on the other side. Which I checked while I was outside cutting, as you saw, that the right side needed to be cut a little bit more than the left. Which I was aware of. I had it marked off with using my straight edge. So I was aware of it, cut a little bit more off, and needed a little bit more extra cut off, so I did it. And I always take an old meter out there to check to make sure that the hole's big enough, because you don't want to finish your job, put all your tools away, come back in to try to drop the meter and find out it doesn't fit. Anyways, it came out pretty nice. I'll put in some shots, some closer up shots of this. Here's what it looks like underneath. Let's see if you guys can see that. No big deal. I'll get a close-up shot of that, put it in the video. So here we go. We have the thing cut out. It's smooth. It's not going to cut your fingers. It's symmetrical. And here's the test meter I was using out there to see if it would fit. And top 2 screws, bottom 2 screws. So this one fit. Now here's the actual meter itself, which they fit into the top holes up here. And before I cut my bottom 2 holes, this is another thing you might want to do too before you go screwing into your tube tester, or screwing holes, drilling holes rather, is check with your top 2 holes lined up where the bottom, where you marked your tube tester, if the holes actually line up for the studs. Because several times, well, a couple times, not several, I've had to enlarge the hole so the tester would drop in there, because like I said, these templates are not an exact science. No matter what you do, I mean, you can get lucky, I guess, but I mean, I cut this template out right on the lines. It fit on this tester perfectly. I mean, it was a tight fit. Did everything right here. The holes on the template are the right size for the studs. Well, maybe I enlarged them a little bit. Maybe that's why there was a little bit of play in there. No matter what you do, you want to check your work to make sure your meter is going to fit. Because more times than not, it doesn't. You don't want to have to do double the work, especially with cutting your tester and the tools it takes to do this. So anyways, I'm going to check where I put the marks for the holes that I'm going to need to drill. And they actually look good. look underneath here with the meter on, see how it looks. Looks like right here, I could take a little bit more off. I'll probably sand a little off right here. Just because this stud up here is just, it's getting held up on the threads. And there is a space, just a little bit of space all the way around here, except for right here. I'll just file that down a little bit, I'll mark it. Right here, from here to there. And I'm going to also file down a little bit off right here. 2 spots. I don't like cutting big giant holes in this to fit. I like it to fit fairly tight. Doesn't have to be exact, but I like it to be fairly tight. So I'm going to file that down in those 2 spots before I put the meter in and drill the holes for the meter studs. Alright, so again, I'm going to do a little filing. Although the meter seems to fit okay, it's too tight. Luckily, on the 2 testers, there's no electronic or anything underneath the meter, so it's a little space to work on. Not really worried about shaving going too far as well. A little nipple sticking out right here. It's nice to stuff out, so aluminum files real nicely. Alright, see what I got here. Much better. Don't need those shavings in here. Just do a little bit more right on the inside here. Alright, move back these off and try again. Okay, so what I did is I put 2 pieces of blue tape underneath the original hole, right where the new hole is going to be drilled. Although it looks like it's going to be safe if I don't go too far down, I still want to know when I'm through and have something to warn me to ease up on the drilling so I don't drill too far and bare a wire or something like that. This is the only time I wish I had level on my drill like those cheap ones. I just start slow, no pressure, and then it's aluminum chassis, so I move around in a circle, it helps me get a better bite. It's easy to operate through this, it's easy to go through the tape, so I want to make sure I'm after. Stepping right through in a second now. Here we go. Make sure we're clean there. Nice clean hole. Let's see if we're on track here. Well, seems a little long. But let's see for a second, let me see where we're at. This one will try to come up just a little bit from the original mark. I don't have it. There, this one won't know. The leakage is there, but it's clear. Alright, starting right through here. Yeah. Alright, leave it alone. Put that 2 tester right down the 2 tester, boom, it'll drop right in. Or, it's going to be a little bit too tight. I'm going to have to just enlarge these bottom holes just a little bit towards the top. That's what I'm thinking anyway. Okay, so I went back off camera, did some more filing. Filed the holes a little bit bigger. Filed out around here a little bit more, because this is what you want to see. Anything other than this is not going to work for you. The meter needs to drop in there just like that. So there it is. And it doesn't seem like a little bit up on the studs here. It's going to be a nice fit. Nothing's blocked. Line adjust is still accessible. And there you go. So all I got to do is hook it up. I'm going to put some terminal lugs on the positive and negative going to the meter and put them on here. I'm going to put the capacitor on its own terminal lugs so that you can take the capacitor off and check it so it's not soldered onto the same connectors as the wires for the meter. So if you want to change the capacitor, you can just use the same terminal lugs or get some different ones. It makes it a lot easier to test the meter, test the capacitor. You because you cannot test the capacitor on the meter. So you want it to drop in there. Anything that's going to, if it gets like that and it's a little bit hard, it's almost down, you think I just push it all the way down, don't do it. You got to do a little bit more fine work on it to get the holes to where they need to be. And I had to work on this a little bit more, where I put those marks out. It was just a little tiny bit sticking out there that was making it just a little bit off. So anyways, I got the hole minimal sizes. The new meter is going to drop right in there like it's supposed to. Nice new meter. And that's what you have to do. Put a meter in. Or you can just make a giant hole here, which I don't advise. I make the hole as small as possible using the cutout. But just be prepared to do additional fine filing, sanding, of removal of the chassis to get the meter to fit in there right. It might mean that enlarging the holes, which I did a little bit on the bottom two holes with a file, nice little round file I have, because you don't want to force the meter down in place. And as you can see now, all the holes are covered. It's using the top two holes from the original Hickok meter, two new holes down below the original Hickok meter holes. Everything's covered. It does sit on these studs, these rivets they have right there, which is fine. It's not going to hurt anything. Everything's still in place. Now, do I still have that Hickok meter around here? I'll show you, if you want to go back and put the original Hickok meter back on, how it isn't going to make any difference whatsoever. Everything will still be covered. Where did I put that? Okay, here we go. Although this one does have this, I can probably, now that the hole's bigger, I can get this to fit on here probably without taking it off. Okay, original Hickok meter. There you go. Sits right there. You don't see any holes from the new meter being put in. And although I'm a little, this one actually sits on those little rivets too. Huh. Those little rivets are a stupid idea right there. So anyways, as you can see, it covers all the holes as well. Only thing is, it's not going to make any difference that that hole's enlarged with your original meter, with your new meter. All it's going to do is make it easier to put your meter on and off. Either meter. It doesn't change anything on the looks of the tube tester. Yeah, you took the chassis apart, but what do you want? A working meter, or you want some tube tester that you can't see the chassis underneath the meter? You want to be able to, what you can see, be perfect? Doesn't really make a lot of sense. If you want to use a tube tester, you're eventually going to need a new meter. These meters just haven't held up. Well, you know, you give them 50, 60 years, I can see why. For some reason, the metal in there attracts a certain type of corrosion. And some of the stuff they put on the meter, like these bars here, are supposed to change the reading of the meter. They do absolutely nothing. You can just take these off and forget about them. If you can't get your line on your tube tester calibrated correctly, do not think that moving this bar around like they tell you in the directions will make a slight difference. This difference is so slight that I can't even see it. So you can just take that piece right off. These do absolutely nothing as far as I'm concerned, except attract corrosion. This type of metal that they have here, it seems like this white powdery erosion stuff is attracted to this metal. And matter of fact, who knows, if Hickok was ahead of its time, they were trying to make something wear out, so you'd have to buy a new one. I don't know. But anyways, so I'll do another part to this. I'll put this up as a separate video, but I'm going to add another video to this when I hook the meter up. And let me see. Anyway, I'll give you a final idea of what the tube tester looks like with it all hooked up with a nice new meter.